Today we are sharing a testimony that will challenge everything you thought you knew about faith, family, and the cost of following truth. This is the story of Layla Haji Abdullah from Brunei. A question from a classmate changed everything. That one question opened a door that could not be closed. And when Layla walked through that door, she discovered Jesus Christ. But in losing everything, Layla found something she never knew she was searching for. She found truth. She found peace. She found Jesus. This story must reach millions. Share it with everyone you know. Let them see that Jesus is worth any cost. My name is Layla Haji Abdullah, and I am from Brunei. I am sitting here today to tell you a story that destroyed my entire life and gave me everything at the same time. This is the story of how a single question from a classmate unraveled everything I thought I knew about faith, about truth, and about God. If you are listening and you are struggling with questions about your own faith, I pray my story will give you the courage to seek truth, no matter what it costs you. I grew up in Bandar Seri Begawan, the capital city of Brunei. Brunei is a small nation on the island of Borneo in Southeast Asia. It is wealthy because of oil, but it is also very strict about Islam. The Sultan rules the country, and Islam is not just the religion that most people practice. Islam is the law of the land. It shapes everything. Where you work, how you dress, what you can watch on television, who you can marry. The golden domes of the Omar Ali Saifuddin Mosque dominate the city. When you see those domes, you remember that Islam is everywhere, all the time. My father was an Imam. His name was Imam Haji Abdullah. He was not just any Imam. He was a very respected religious leader in our district. He led prayers at the mosque. He taught people about Islam. He gave advice to families about religion, about marriage, about business. Our home was always filled with people coming to ask my father questions about faith and life. He was an important man. People respected him. My mother was the perfect Imam's wife. She was modest. She was devoted to Islam. Everyone knew her for her charitable work and for how seriously she took Islamic values. I had no brothers or sisters. I was their only daughter, and because I was the daughter of an important Imam, I carried a very heavy responsibility. My father told me many times that my behavior reflected not just on me, but on my entire family and on Islam itself. From when I was very young, my father taught me to be a good Muslim woman. I wore my tudung, the head covering, with pride. I prayed 5 times every day. I fasted during Ramadan. I studied the Quran. I memorized verses. I followed all the rules. My father was very proud of me. He would tell visitors that I was his greatest blessing, a daughter who was a true example of Islamic virtue. When I turned 20 years old, my parents did something that they believed was a great honor for me. They arranged for me to be engaged to a man named Ismail. Ismail came from a very important royal family. His family was connected to the Sultan himself. His family was wealthy. His family had power. This engagement was not just about me and Ismail. It was about joining 2 families together. It was about raising my family's status in society. Everyone believed this was the greatest thing that could happen to me. I did not question this arrangement. That was not what dutiful daughters did. Dutiful daughters accepted what their parents decided. I told myself I was fortunate. Ismail was handsome. He was educated. He came from a good family. What more should I want? My mother cried tears of joy when the engagement was announced. My father walked taller than he had ever walked before. I was supposed to be the happiest girl in Brunei. To prepare me for life as a royal wife, my parents put me in an exclusive private university in Bandar Seri Begawan. This university was where the children of important families studied. I was 20 years old when I started. In my 3rd semester, something happened that changed everything. I met a girl named Rachel. Rachel was different from everyone else at the university. She was Chinese Malaysian, and she was Christian. She was one of the very few non-Muslim students. In a sea of hijabs and girls dressed in modest Islamic clothing, Rachel stood out. But she was respectful. She dressed modestly. She was not disrespectful to Islam. She was just different. Rachel and I became partners for a group project in our social studies class. At first, we just talked about the project, but over time, we started talking about deeper things. Rachel was curious about Islam. She asked me genuine questions about what I believed and why I believed it. I enjoyed explaining my faith to her. I was confident in my knowledge. I was proud to represent Islam. One afternoon, after we finished working on our project, we were sitting in the university cafe drinking tea. The conversation turned to religion. I was explaining to Rachel how Islam was the final and perfect revelation from Allah, how it corrected the errors that had crept into Christianity and Judaism over the centuries. I was confident in what I was saying. Rachel listened to me carefully. Then she asked me a question. She said that Muslims believe Jesus was a very great prophet, a prophet who never sinned. She said that Muslims believe Jesus performed miracles. She said that Muslims believe Jesus was born of a virgin mother. She said that Muslims believe Jesus will return at the end of time to judge the world. She said that the Quran itself says all of these things about Jesus. Then Rachel asked me something that I had never thought about before. She asked me why, if Jesus was so special and so perfect, if he was the only prophet who never sinned, why did I not follow his teachings more closely than I followed the teachings of other prophets? She asked me how it made sense that Jesus would return to judge the world if he was just a prophet like any other prophet. Then she asked me the question that broke something open inside me. She asked, if Allah could take Jesus directly to heaven without him dying, if Jesus was so perfect and complete in his revelation, why would Allah need to send another prophet, Muhammad, 600 years later? What did Muhammad add that Jesus had not already revealed? I opened my mouth to answer her, but I had no answer. I had never thought about these things before. In Islamic teaching, we were told Jesus was a prophet, and that was all. We did not ask questions about why his role seemed different from other prophets. We did not ask why Jesus would come back to judge if Muhammad was the final prophet. We just accepted what we were taught. I felt my face get hot. I felt embarrassed and confused and something else. Something was cracking inside me. A dam was breaking. Questions that I had never allowed myself to ask were starting to form in my mind. I told Rachel that she was twisting Islam, that she did not understand it correctly. I left the cafe angry and shaken, but her questions followed me home. They echoed in my mind when I was praying. They disturbed my sleep at night. I tried to push them away, but they kept returning, growing louder and more insistent. I went to my father seeking answers. I asked him about Jesus' special place in Islamic teaching. I asked him why Jesus never sinned when all other prophets did sin. I asked him why Jesus would return to judge the world. My father gave me the traditional answers. He quoted the Quran and Hadith, but somehow his answers felt incomplete. They told me what to believe, but not why it made sense. I spoke with other Islamic scholars. I read commentaries. I read religious texts. But the more I searched for answers, the more questions I had. Why did the Quran speak so highly of Jesus but tell us so little about what Jesus actually taught? Why was Jesus called the Word of Allah and the Spirit from Allah if he was just a human prophet like other prophets? Why did Islamic tradition say that Jesus would return to defeat the Antichrist and establish justice on earth if Muhammad was supposed to be the final and greatest prophet? These questions tormented me. Asking them felt like betrayal. In Brunei, questioning Islam was not just spiritually dangerous, it was legally dangerous. Our country had strict laws against insulting Islam. Even discussing doubts about Islam could be seen as apostasy. And apostasy was a serious crime. I felt trapped between my growing questions and the knowledge that pursuing answers could destroy everything. My family, my reputation, my life. My engagement to Ismail continued. The wedding preparations moved forward. I selected fabrics for my wedding dress. I discussed the guest list with my mother. I attended pre-wedding gatherings with Ismail's family, but inside I felt like I was drowning in uncertainty. How could I marry into a royal Muslim family when I was secretly wrestling with doubts about the foundation of our faith? How could I lie to everyone I loved? One evening, about 4 months after Rachel asked me those questions, I found myself alone in my room crying. I was exhausted from trying to find answers that satisfied both my mind and my heart. In desperation, I did something I had never done before. Instead of reciting the prayers I had memorized, I spoke from my heart. I said, if Allah is real and truly cares about me, if Allah wants me to find truth, then show me clearly. I cannot keep living like this. I cannot keep living in confusion and uncertainty. Please show me what is true. That night, I had a dream that was completely different from any dream I had ever had. I found myself in a place filled with light. The light was warm, not harsh or blinding. The light was inviting. It felt like love. In that light, I saw a figure in white. I could not see his face clearly, but I knew who he was. Every part of my being recognized him, even though I had never met him. It was Jesus. He did not speak with words that I heard with my ears. but I heard him clearly in my spirit and my heart. He told me that he was the way, the truth, and the life. He told me that he had been waiting for me. He told me that he loved me. He showed me that all my questions would be answered if I would follow him. He showed me that he was not just a prophet but the Son of God. He showed me that he had died for my sins and had risen from the dead. He told me that through him I could know God personally, not as a distant judge but as a father. I woke up with my heart beating very fast. Tears were streaming down my face, and I felt a certainty in my soul that terrified me. This was not what I had expected. I had been looking for answers to strengthen my Islamic faith, not to destroy it. I had been praying to Allah, and instead, Jesus had appeared to me. I spent the next several days trying to convince myself that it was just a dream, that it was just my imagination influenced by Rachel's questions. But I could not shake what I had experienced. The presence I had felt in that dream was more real than anything I had known in 20 years of Islamic practice. It was more real than anything I had ever felt. I tried to pray my usual prayers, but they felt empty. I tried to read the Quran, but the words seemed to confirm what Jesus had shown me, not deny it. Verses about Jesus being the word of Allah, verses about his miraculous birth, verses about his sinless life, verses about his return to judge the world. All of these seemed to point to something greater than what I had been taught. They seemed to point to Jesus being more than just a prophet. I met with Rachel again. This time I was not defensive or argumentative. I told her about my questions. I told her about my confusion. I told her about my dream. She listened with tears in her eyes. Then she shared with me about the gospel. She told me about Jesus' life and his teachings. She told me about his death on the cross and his resurrection. She told me that Jesus claimed to be God, that he proved this through his miracles and through rising from the dead. She told me that through faith in Jesus, I could have eternal life and a personal relationship with God. Everything Rachel told me resonated with what I had experienced in my dream. For the first time in months, the pieces began fitting together. Jesus was not just another prophet in a long line of prophets. Jesus was the culmination of God's revelation. Jesus was the perfect image of God himself. Jesus was the bridge between humanity and the divine. This was why he was sinless. This was why he would return to judge the world. This was why his role in Islam seemed so much greater than just the title of prophet. But accepting this truth meant rejecting everything I had been raised to believe. It meant betraying my family, my community, my culture, and my country. In Brunei, leaving Islam was not just a personal choice. It was a crime. It could mean imprisonment. It could mean public punishment, or worse. And for someone from my family, from my background, engaged to someone from a royal family, the consequences would be catastrophic beyond anything I could imagine. I wrestled with this decision for weeks. I prayed, I cried. Part of me wanted to ignore what I had learned, to go through with the wedding and live a comfortable, secure life, even if it meant denying truth. But another part of me knew I could not do that. I had encountered something real. I had found answers to the deepest longings of my heart. How could I turn away from truth once I had found it? Finally, after much prayer and many tears, I made my decision. I told Rachel that I wanted to follow Jesus. She connected me with a small group of underground Christians in Brunei. These were believers who met secretly because open Christianity was restricted in our country. They taught me more about Jesus. They gave me a Bible. They prayed with me. For the first time in my life, I experienced what it meant to have peace with God. This peace was not based on my performance or my perfect obedience to laws and rules. It was based on what Jesus had already done for me. It was based on his love, but I knew I could not keep this secret forever. The wedding was approaching. The invitations had been sent. Over 500 people had been invited to the wedding. I could not marry Ismail while following Jesus. I could not stand before God and my family and vow to marry into an Islamic royal family when I no longer believed in Islam. I had to tell my family. Even though I knew it would destroy them, I had to tell the truth. I chose to tell my mother first. I thought maybe she would understand, or at least listen to me. I found her in the kitchen one afternoon and I told her I needed to speak with her about something very important. I tried to explain gently. I told her that I had been studying and praying and searching for truth. I told her that I had come to believe that Jesus is not just a prophet, but the Son of God. I told her that I could no longer continue as a Muslim. The color drained from my mother's face. She stared at me like I had told her I had committed murder. Then she started screaming. She called for my father. She cried that I had lost my mind. She cried that I had brought shame on our family. She could barely speak through her sobs. My father came running. I tried to explain to him. I tried to tell him about my questions, my search for truth, and what I had discovered about Jesus. But he would not listen. His face turned dark with rage. For the first time in my life, I saw hatred in my father's eyes when he looked at me. He told me I was no longer his daughter. He said I had betrayed everything he had taught me. He said I had disgraced our family name. He said I had destroyed our reputation. Within hours, the news reached Ismail's family. The engagement was canceled immediately. The wedding invitations had already been sent to over 500 guests. Now my family had to inform all of them that there would be no wedding. The reason was that the bride had committed apostasy. She had left Islam. The shame and scandal were beyond anything I could have imagined. My father was forced to resign from his position at the mosque. How could an imam continue leading prayers when he could not even keep his own daughter in the faith? The community that had once respected and honored him now whispered about him with pity and judgment. Everything he had built over decades of faithful service was destroyed in a matter of days. My mother suffered a complete mental breakdown. She stopped eating. She stopped leaving her room. She spent her days crying and praying, begging Allah to bring her daughter back to Islam. She blamed herself. She was convinced she had failed as a mother. The guilt I felt watching my mother deteriorate was almost unbearable. My extended family disowned me completely. Aunts and uncles who had celebrated my engagement now refused to speak my name. Cousins I had grown up with blocked me from their lives. I received messages telling me I deserved to die. I received messages saying I was a traitor to Islam and to my people. I received messages saying I had blood on my hands for destroying my family. The threats became more serious. Some were from religious extremists who believed that apostates should be killed. Others were from people in my community who believed I had insulted Islam and deserved punishment. I could not leave my house without fear of being attacked. My father told me he could no longer guarantee my safety. He told me I needed to leave Brunei. I had nowhere to go. I had no money. I had no resources. I had never worked. I had never lived independently. I had never even traveled alone. Everything I had known and everyone I had loved was now lost to me. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. I wondered if following Jesus was worth losing absolutely everything. But even in those darkest moments, I felt a presence with me that I had never known as a Muslim. Jesus was real. He was not distant like Allah had seemed. He was close and personal. When I prayed, it was not reciting memorized words. It was having a conversation with someone who loved me and understood my pain completely. When I read the Bible, it was not just religious text. It was living words that spoke directly to my situation, to my suffering, to my fear. Rachel and the underground Christian community helped me escape from Brunei. They connected me with Christian organizations that helped persecuted believers. Eventually, I was able to flee to the Philippines. The journey was terrifying and dangerous. But I made it to Manila. In Manila, I found a Christian community that welcomed me. These were believers who had also suffered for their faith. They understood my pain. They had experienced loss. They held me when I cried. They prayed with me. They became my new family. I have been living in the Philippines for almost 2 years now. It is a predominantly Christian country. For the first time in my life, I can practice my faith openly without fear. I have found work. I have made new friends. I have become part of a church that has become my family. The believers here have shown me what it means to live in Christian community, to worship freely, and to grow in faith without hiding or pretending. But the pain of losing my family never goes away. I think about my parents every single day. I pray for them constantly. I ask God to heal their hearts. I ask God to open their eyes to the truth about Jesus. I know they believe I have betrayed them and destroyed our family, but I pray that one day they will understand. I did not leave Islam to hurt them. I left Islam because I found truth that I could not deny. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I had never asked those questions, if I had just accepted what I was taught. If I had just married Ismail and lived as a good Muslim wife, my life would certainly be easier. My life would be more comfortable. I would have wealth, status, family, and security. But I would not have truth, and I would not have the peace and joy that comes from knowing Jesus personally. The cost of following Jesus has been higher than I ever imagined, but I would make the same choice again. Jesus is not just a prophet or a good teacher. Jesus is the Son of God who loved me enough to die for me. Jesus rose from the dead to give me eternal life. Jesus walks with me every day, even when everyone else has abandoned me. If you are watching this and you are struggling with doubts about your faith, I want to encourage you. Do not be afraid of asking questions. Truth can withstand examination. If Islam is true, then honest questions will only strengthen your faith. But if you discover that Jesus is who he claims to be, then no cost is too high to follow him. I know there are others like me who have questions but are afraid to explore them. I understand that fear because I lived it. But I also know what is on the other side of that fear. Freedom, truth, a relationship with God that transforms everything. My prayer is that my story will give courage to seekers who are searching for truth. My prayer is that my story will bring comfort to believers who are suffering for their faith. My prayer is that my story will bring glory to Jesus who saved me and continues to sustain me every single day. Following Jesus cost me everything I thought mattered, but he gave me something far greater in return. He gave me himself, and that is enough. That is more than enough. If you are questioning your faith, do not ignore those questions. Seek truth with all your heart. Ask God to reveal himself to you. He answered my desperate prayer in a dream when I had nowhere else to turn. I believe he will answer your prayers too. The journey may be difficult. The cost may be high. But Jesus is worth it. He is always worth it. I am Layla Haji Abdullah from Bandar Seri Begawan, Brunei. I was raised as an Imam's daughter in a strict Islamic nation. I questioned my faith. I encountered Jesus Christ in a dream. I chose to follow him. I lost everything. But I found truth. I found peace. I found Jesus. And that changed my life forever.